All right, welcome everyone to the July 29th, 2021 Helm Developer Call. We're glad to have you on board today. We'll follow our normal pattern, announcements followed by discussion. So first announcement, pretty standard, next patch release August 11th. So we got about 2 weeks to go, so once a month. PRs should be reviewed and included as much as possible. More importantly, the 3.7 RC is at the end of this month. So that's going to be important to get this stuff in before it's too late. Any comments from anybody else on the release schedule? All right, any other announcements from anyone? All right, how efficient. Let's jump into discussion. We have a couple of items on the agenda. Martin, you mentioned bearer token authentication with PR 8447.
Yeah, I've stuck 2 things on this week, but if other people want to jump in, just jump in. It was kind of empty. So so this has been around for a while, and it's gone a bit stale about providing the bearer token authentication. I think maybe is Matt Farina on. Matt, you kind of gave some feedback during this PR. I just wonder, you seem to have a knowledge around this area, around the authentication on that. Where do you think it is at the moment, or is it something we can progress, or is it something that's maybe is not feasible?
So I think bearer token authentication is entirely feasible. I think the issues that we had with it were, my original issues were design things like breaking function signatures, changing them. And then later on, it had to do with the way you could pass a token in via standard in, and how that worked, just dealing with security. Since then, it's just become stale, and unfortunately, I haven't followed up with it, but it needs some work, because right, you can't change function signatures without changing a major version. And when it comes to the security of passing in that token, that's one of the things you're actually going to want to not just have the ability to have, Helm, whatever, -- token, and then specify the token, because then it ends up in your bash history, your CSH release history. It's stored in places you don't want that token stored. You actually want to be able to pass that via standard in, if possible, by putting it at the end and then echoing. There's ways to do that, because in CI pipelines, your CI pipeline may actually expand that token then, and you'll end up seeing it. Whereas if you echo and otherwise, the CI tools know to hide that so it's not expanded. And so it presents security issues that way. And that was my last hang up on it, was that we need to present it in a way that it works well in CI, it works well with tooling, so that token doesn't go in other places. I haven't checked in on it since then. It looks like it's just gone stale. And so it was never an issue of could we or should we do this? It was always in the implementation details of doing it well.
Okay, so would it be worth put a comment to the OP, who has a great handle called Lemon LI, know, to just ask on those points, can they address them, or do they still have a bandwidth to work on it even?
Yeah, no, we can go ahead and do that. And yeah, I'll have to go through it. He may have addressed the token from standard in. I see some changes, and it may just be the fact that it went stale, and when he was asked to rebase it, it just he hasn't pushed a rebased version of it, and that's the hang up here.
Yeah, I think it may be the rebase. Yeah,
and that's the hang up. So I'll take an action to follow up with this one, because I already have context on it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks guys. Next item, Martin, as you said, there was no other item. So Go SDK installing Kubernetes resources to the wrong namespace.
Okay, so this is a kind of, this is a bug basically. And it's when you use the SDK, there's an issue where even if you set the namespace during an init, it does look after the release name and put that into the proper namespace. Unfortunately, the kube client doesn't use that, and we're not setting that. Now, you get some good feedback on that, Matt, and the other Matt Fisher also came back saying there is a way to do this. So I'm not sure. I had a look at it. I couldn't see any nice way of setting this, but maybe Matt Farina and Adam might have a more in-depth knowledge.
So I'll jump on this first because I've had to deal with this recently. So there are two namespaces, right? So where you put the Kubernetes resources is separate from where you store the Helm record, right? The release record. And when you set the namespace on the install action, that sets the location of where you store the Helm record, but not necessarily all the resources that are installed. That's installed in a different place. And you can only set that once when you instantiate the kube client. So every namespace you want to install into, you need to instantiate a new kube client and set the namespace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was looking at it, and what you're saying there seems to be correct. I couldn't see any other way around that.
Yes.
Unless you were directly accessing an object with the kube client. So if you're directly accessing a pod or something, you can then set the namespace when you're accessing it.
Yeah. When you're dealing with the pod, you can specify it on there. But the general namespace that all the resources are going to be used is with kube client. Now, the kube client that Helm uses is interface based. And I don't even think does it have a namespace method.
Now, there would be a way around this, all right, for the caller when they call the CLI, when they get handed to the CLI settings, if there was a way to set the namespace, then it would then work, because inside in the code, when it gets the namespace afterwards with the kube client, then it would be okay. You'd have it set before then, but you possibly would have to look at changing the API on it then. So I'm not sure if we want to go down that route.
Yeah, there's no way to change it until Helm version 4. This is actually one of the things I'd like to clean up in Helm version 4 is to make this better. We over on Hipper, where I've been working, we actually struggled through namespace changing and things like that. I'm actually trying to remember where we did it, because we did figure out how to do this kind of thing.
Should we label this issue V4?
Well, so it's not, basically the API is not easy to work with on doing this. I'd have to look at exactly what his situation was again, because I can't remember. There's a way to do this, and the API is ugly to deal with it. It's not elegant. And so cleaning that up would be what I would call a V4 thing to clean it up. Yeah, that would be nice to do. It's one of the things I'd like to see in V4. And as more, for Helm's use case, for our situation as the Helm client that executes end-to-end, no long running process, what we have works, right? What we've come to discover with Ugly is people running long running services, operators, application services, stuff like that, that want to keep doing things. And that's when we've started to see issues with the API, because it doesn't work for those things as well. And so I think there's ways we can clean that up in V4. I'll see, because since this issue came up and I commented on it, we've done actually a whole bunch of work in Hipper. And so we know how to do this and play with it now and make those changes on the fly. And so I could probably share where our code is that does this, which would help them.
Yeah, I think it's, if we can help the OP and other people, because it's coming up quite a bit, then I think that would be advantageous, especially if you've been through the mix after a while. Because I know from the last time of me playing around with the, as you say, with the Kubernetes API, it's a place where you get lost in for a long time till you find what you need to do.
Yes, it is. And I'll go poking through our code. I'll take an action to go poke through our code. It'll be today or tomorrow, and then respond to it. And you can all read what we did over there. Adam
So-
is raising his physical hand. Wow.
So is the issue the namespace set in the client after it's initialized? Am I understanding that correctly?
I think so. It's either that or initializing it isn't setting it right.
Well, initialize doesn't set it on the Cube client.
Wait, so the client has a namespace on it you can change. That's not it. Where is it? It's
Well,
somewhere in there.
it gets it
There's
from
like
the,
maybe there's a third spot. That's why I
Yeah.
said I got to look through the code.
but what it does is when it's doing any operation on the cluster outside of the release namespace, it gets it from the environmental variable, whatever that's set to, or it gets it from the kube config, whatever the context is there.
So if you look in the issue, he'll do a setup of it where the action config is initialized with a namespace. And then yeah, someplace. I remember running into this now in like 3-4 months ago.
But if you
Which
look
is
at the
wild.
different operations for an install, an upgrade, or whatever, it calls get namespace from the environmental. So if in package CLI environment file, it gets the namespace from out of there. So they're two separate namespaces, unfortunately.
And there should be two separate namespaces conceptually, because where we store the release object, right? That secret by default can be a different namespace from where you store the resources. Right.
Yeah.
So there's two places that you need to set a namespace. And I can't remember where we.
Do we
I
want
see
to?
what the issue is. So if there's an explicit namespace set, we're not going to inject that after it's parsed by the Kubernetes client. So then the Kubernetes client is going to calculate its own and inject it into the parsed object. And so setting our top level namespace will not override that.
You have to instantiate a new Kubernetes client with the new namespace, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Is this, yeah. Yeah, I'll have to go walk through this again.
So we can definitely inject into it the namespace specified for the client, but then you will not be able to override it in the actual chart. Because on create, we can say, rather than use the parsed namespace, use the namespace we already have for the client. But then like if you specify in the object or in the parsed generated manifests from the chart, it will always override namespace.
Yeah.
To what was explicitly set for the Helm client.
Yeah, in this case, what we need to do is provide details on how to use the SDK. If you want to set the Cube client to be a different namespace. If you want to set that one, which is, I think the question they're asking for. And I know we've done this recently over at SUSE. So I can try to track that down, but there is a way to do it, because you'll see there's the builder in the Kube client. Is that it? That causes us, that does the injection?
Oh yeah, we do that. So I'm not sure where the issue would be coming from then.
No, I think it's the Kube client. Hold on.
It's the factory builder where we inject it.
There is something about it though. Where is my?
Just a quick note, I've also passed this along to Hida Badels, who has been maintaining the Flux Helm operator and now the Flux Helm controller for years. And he said in a few hours he'll comment on that issue, because we've dealt with this in the controller.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a way to do it. It's just not clear, and I forget how to do it offhand.
Okay. I'd say we can move on probably to the next item, if there's one. Mark.
There is no next item, so you guys had plenty of time. If somebody else has something to bring up, this is the perfect time. We have 12 minutes. If we need volunteers for next time, we have notes. We need issue triage. We need moderator.
I'll take issue triage.
Anybody else, or anybody for moderator? I can moderate again, but for variety, if somebody else wants to take it.
I can do that. I was just checking my calendar. Happy to.
Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
All right, nothing has been added to the discussion list, so are we reclaiming 11 minutes, or is somebody taking advantage? We'll go in
Thanks,
once,
folks.
going twice.
Summer hours.
Don't be shy. All right. So it's great to see everybody. Have a good rest of the week.
See you next
See
week.
you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.